Hi, I'm Amanda, and on this channel I share my experience as a mystic. It's a personal path of devotion to divine wisdom and a spiritual journey of my own. And it's also the work that I do with clients who come to me for spirit readings, guidance on their soul path and their journey, their experience in relationships, their life purpose, and their life's work. Today, I want to talk about our relationships with other people. It's one of the gifts as humans that we have to expand our souls, to learn, to grow, and to enjoy each other, that we have such strong draw to other people in relationship. Whether you are extroverted or introverted or some mix of the two, we do have natural tendencies to want to connect with other human beings. And that also happens to be one of the ways we get ourselves into some really difficult and painful experiences in conflict with other human beings, whether they are people really close to us, in our families, people that we love, or people we work with, run into in the world on a daily basis, or friends that we spend time with. So today I'm going to share my spiritual perspective on the concept of boundaries in relationship. You hear a lot of conversation about boundaries when you get into the subject of psychology or pop spirituality that focuses a lot on self-care and the idea of loving oneself above all before you're able to be effective as a person in relationships or in the world, that self-love is the most important thing, and that has to mean setting certain boundaries with the people in your life. I don't emphasize that recommendation in my work with clients in a spiritual sense, because so often what people tend to do is over focus on putting up walls, setting lines in the sand, putting boundaries around their expectations of other people. And they get so focused on that it creates an energetic wall that holds them back in ways that they don't understand why they're being held back. When you think of the concept of the more attention you give to something, the worse it gets, that's a really shortcut, easy way to understand why paying a lot of attention to setting walls or setting boundaries around yourself in relationship could create more of the problem that you're actually trying to prevent in the first place. So instead, I at least ask people to shift to the idea of having boundaries instead of setting them. If you're not focused on building up a wall, you just know that you have certain expectations of yourself and how you will behave in the world. You have boundaries, as in you are a certain energetic presence with other people around you. Here are some ways, spiritually speaking, that you as a soul in this life that you're living can learn to have strong boundaries that facilitate healthier relationships and interactions for you in the world. The first way to know that you have strong, healthy boundaries is in knowing your own self really well. What does it mean to know yourself? That's a question for anyone who dives into spiritual teachings that go back, thousands and thousands of years. To know oneself and what you're made of and what your existence is all about is a very personal journey. It's something that I provide guidance for people along the way to help them understand themselves, but it's so personal. We each need to embark on that journey and take it really in a unique and specific way to us. So the practical tool that I offer, and this is a challenge for so many people these days, is to learn to spend time and even enjoy time by yourself. Being alone, being solitary, is a source of a lot of fear for some people. And back to what I was saying earlier about the natural tendency of wanting to connect with other people, it makes sense that we then could be afraid of being alone because we so want to connect with other people. So the piece that's important in readying your spirit to have healthy relationships with other people is to not have that fear of being alone. I think especially in romantic relationships, a lot of people take behavior from their partner or accept things about circumstances that they might not otherwise, simply because they are afraid of what it would feel like to be alone, to be without that other person. When you stop being afraid of being alone, you become entirely free in every relationship you have. If you're not afraid of being by yourself, it really lightens up your spirit, and you can sort of turn the energy back into being your own strongest self, ready to engage and enjoy with whomever is available and ready and lining up with you in the right time. This first tool is something that I usually recommend you just try out in small doses, especially if you're someone who's used to being surrounded by people all of the time, having company for everything that you do. Maybe you're a student and you're surrounded by other people in college all the time, or you live in a big family full of siblings and you're used to that company ever since childhood. So if that's you, it's especially important to just do little doses, like maybe give yourself one day a month where you spend the whole day without seeing another person, and look forward to enjoying certain things that just you like to do on your own, that you can't get anyone else to do with you usually. Whatever it is, having a day that you look forward to that is entirely solitary is a good way to start this. Then, of course, it can go all the way to a recommendation of spending more days in a row by yourself, sort of a retreat. Some people take retreats in silence, where not only are they by themselves, but they're not speaking at all during the time that they've set for their retreat. That's a tradition that goes back to many of the most deeply spiritual mystics in history. The idea of being solitary and just being connected from your soul to God, whatever higher power you feel connected to when you're by yourself. So this is something that, everyday modern people can weave into our lives in a really intentional way that provides you with that foundation of fearlessness that will then lead to the idea of having healthy boundaries when you are back with other people. The second important tool that I emphasize in our relationships and what it looks like and feels like to have healthy boundaries rather than setting walls against people, is the language that we use. You may not notice until you start to think about it how often you are starting sentences with you, like you always, or I need you to do this. And it's very focused outward on what you want them to do to make you feel a certain way or to make your experience better. That we tend to push that out on other people more than we need to. Try to start switching to I statements. I feel good when this happens, or I would like to do this tomorrow, and then just let it be without grabbing at the other person with your language. This tool of using language is going to be really different for everyone because we all come with really different ways of communicating from our families that we grew up in, with the friends we spend time with. So I keep it very simple to the concept of I statements versus you statements. And you have to kind of interpret this in your own life the best you can. But what I'm asking with this tool is for you to practice at least first noticing how often you express yourself to other people in a way that is making a demand on them or an expectation on them to do something, act a certain way, show up for you in a way that will make you feel better. Let's say you're in a partnership with really difficult in-laws and your partner's parents expect to spend the holidays with you in a certain way every year. And it feels really natural and reasonable for you to ask your partner to fix that situation. You don't like spending time with these in-laws. You need them to make a change. It calls on them to dig in deep to the complex relationship they have with their parents. You're asking some different behavior from the parents themselves. All of that is a sense of powerlessness for you, because really, when it comes down to it, as much as it maybe has worked for you sometimes, you can't control your partner, and you certainly can't control their parents. So energetically speaking, your boundary, having a boundary in this case, would be to say, this Thanksgiving, as an example, I am really looking forward to spending the time this way. I would really like to spend it just with you or just with my family. And setting your expectation without demanding that the other person think of it a certain way, respond a certain way, and just sinking into your own core and knowing that your expectation, your desire is reasonable. It's reasonable. We all have good reasons for the things that we wish for. Now, the hard part in this is wanting to control the other person's reaction or response to what you have said. Having strong, healthy boundaries means we are able to make statements about what we want and what we expect for ourselves without needing a certain response to come back to us from someone else. That's the difference between having a boundary and setting a boundary, where you're setting something up for another person to act or respond to you a certain way. You lose your power. So I use a lot of physical gestures, like bring it back, bring the power back into your core, because my spiritual work has so much to do with energy centers in the body. Our bodies tell us how we feel and whether we're empowered or disempowered. So if you feel sort of anxious energy up here in your chest when you're communicating, using certain language with another person, expecting something specific out of them, that's a sign in your body that your power needs to come down a little bit lower, relax back, take some deeper breaths as you're communicating, and your language can then be more effective and centered in the I instead of you. The 3 tools that I recommend to focus on developing your own sense of having healthy boundaries in relationships are knowing yourself specifically really well as a unique soul, becoming comfortable spending time alone in solitude, and learning to use language that is empowered rather than giving away your power through the words that you use in relationships. These 3 tools you find versions of in therapy or in reading self-help books. And I'm here to tell you, from a spiritual perspective, your soul's work also really benefits from these tools. I hope those 3 areas of focus help give you something to think about in your relationships with other people. And if you ever like a personal reading one-on-one with me about those relationships and what I pick up about the energy between you, I am here and looking forward to connecting with you. Please reach out and please follow and subscribe to this channel for more spiritual guidance. Thank you.